In today's fast-paced and unpredictable world, finding the right strategy to elevate your brand can be a challenge. And as businesses navigate the complexities of our current climate, from social justice issues to health crises, standing out and communicating effectively has never been more crucial. Our next guest is a powerhouse in the world of public relations and entrepreneurship. She guides her Brooklyn-based firm to a successful and, purposeful destiny with impactful strategies. And I want to introduce you now, the founder and CEO of TJM and Company Media Boutique, Ms. Tiffany Joy Murchison. And thank you, Tiffany, for being with us.
Thank you for having me again.
I'm glad to have you. And I mean, a little different platform, but we got you here, and I'm glad you're sitting here with us because I want to have this conversation about image, right? And we see a lot, I'm trying to say this with a straight face, we see a lot of images that are just like crazy. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that more so in a time such as this is the importance of having that right image. Mm-hmm. And particularly it just affects the way we look, and then it also creates stereotypes and narratives. And so for yourself as a PR person, how do you see image today?
You just made my heart hurt.
Yeah, well.
As I was sitting here listening to the other guests, I was thinking about messaging and how important that concept is just across the board. And you'll hear educators say in elementary school, how do you know a police officer is an officer because he has on a uniform, or a doctor's a doctor because they have on scrubs and a stethoscope. And I always say to my clients, what is your image or your appearance telling people you are, or who are you telling people you are through the image that you have today? We are in a society where we think anything goes. Social media has tricked us into believing that anything goes. But then when you're in the rooms where the big checks are written and when policies are made, anything doesn't go. And the conversations that are being had behind the veil are very different than the conversations we're having out in public.
Yeah. Public relations has the opportunity to really help to form a narrative, to shape a narrative.
Yes.
And unfortunately, when we look at, communities of color, sometimes that narrative isn't always right. But we need those people behind the scenes to be able to help to navigate that. For yourself, talk to us about that. When you look at, and we can look every day, right? Turn on TV, be like, oh, you need to give me a call, right? But then the reality is, because sometimes we just blow it.
Yeah, we do. There have been so many times that I have been on television and I'll go on Instagram or Facebook and be like, does anybody know so-and-so? Tell them to give me a call. I go back to the situation that happened with the sister at Harvard, and I posted on LinkedIn a while back, like, I wonder who was informing her outside of the folks at Harvard. That's why people that look like us are so important in the work that we do. There are so many of us now out here helping us shape our narratives and tell our stories, but too oftentimes you see that the biggest voices don't have support that looks like us, and they end up either in hot water or in a mess. If we look at what's going on in our city right now, this morning as I was walking out the door, I was like, man, he needs to give me a call, right? Somebody needs to tell him to call me. But it is important because we are the only ones who can tell our story in a way that resonates and is important and is authentic to us, right? Again, going back to Harvard, I'm sure there were people telling her what to say, but those people were beneficial to Harvard, not to her. Right. And the fallout was on Dr. Gray.
Right. So here you are, this PR executive right now, and doing great work across New York City. But the road here wasn't always easy for yourself.
No, not at all. First of all, just being a black woman in America is difficult. We know that. I think we are like the most hated person in America as a black woman. It was also difficult to prove to people on both sides of the aisle, those that look like me and those that don't, that I knew what I was talking about. In the beginning, I had clients that said, oh yeah, that sounds good. It's nice to have you on the payroll because it looks good for us, but we're really not going to do what you say do. And oftentimes I've sat back and just nodded and had the face to say, I told you so. I do this every day. It's what I live, eat, breathe. I watch the news in the morning. I read news briefings all day long. I have my finger on the pulse of what's happening in pop culture. I have a team behind me that if I miss something, they're telling me what's going on. So whether it's hip hop, whether it's politics, whether it's the economy, we stay in the know. And for us, it's not just what's going on, but it's how that is impacting people that look like us as well. And that's really, really important.
To have that kind of impact is major, right? And I think the work that you do is critical because, as we say, not only does it, shape people's narrative, it helps to shape a narrative, but it also helps to create a voice and helping to find a voice. Talk to me from that perspective because for you, right, I think knowing you for years now, you've kind of like found your voice.
I have.
And
I have.
she's using it too. And the reality, because she didn't want to do this before, right? You wouldn't do this before, but now you've kind of like found your voice, but at the same time, there's others that need to find their voice if they're going to be successful.
So what happened with me was I was comfortable playing the background. And then I realized that wasn't going to work because I needed to tell people why people like me were important, why I need to do what it is that I do and how I do it and who stands behind me when I do it. My faith is very important to me. So being able to speak out and say, this is what we do, this is why we do it. TJM & Co. is where PR meets purpose. We advocate for those who don't have a voice. Most of our clients are in the nonprofit space. And it was important for us to say, they have something to say and we're going to help them say it. And this is how we're going to help them say it. So it is really important. For me to brand myself was extremely important. How can I tell clients that I can brand them when I'm standing in the background and not branding myself? So, but again, being a Black woman in America, imposter syndrome is real. There are a lot of competing messages out there that tell us we can and we shouldn't, and we need to just stay in our space, or, we don't need to get paid the same that everybody else gets paid. Talking about social justice, the pay gap is a big problem there. And so it was really hard to demand what my counterparts, white male counterparts, are getting paid to do the same work with the same, if not an even bigger impact.
Yeah, you led into where I was going because there is that inequality there, right?
Absolutely.
And how real is it?
I emceed a Women in Business Summit last week, and the stats, I want to say Black women are getting 56 cents on the dollar of their white male counterparts. That's a lot. A Black woman in a 40-year career is going to lose $407,000 in salary versus a white male in the same industry or the same job that she's in. That's serious. So when we talk about messaging, what message are you sending to those that look like us to say we're not worth being paid the same thing that someone else is paid that doesn't look like us? That our education, although we pay the same tuition, we got the same degree, our education isn't as valuable or isn't as worth. My experience isn't worth as much as your experience is because I'm a Black woman or because I'm a woman. Right now there's an attack on women in this country. And so that's another place where my voice is really necessary.
So how do we close that gap for those persons who are out there watching and saying, listen, you know what, I'm a PR person, or I'm trying to get into PR. I already know what the potential possibly looks like. What can I do to safeguard or to put myself in the best possible position?
So for someone just starting out, I would always say, don't run to entrepreneurship. Right now, we glorify that. It's corny to have a 9-to-5. Everybody thinks entrepreneurship is sitting on the beach with a pina colada, and that is not true, and it is not for the faint at heart. But you need to, I say, pay dues, and you need to understand what structure is like. So go work for a PR company so that you can actually see what happens on the day-to-day. Don't just run out there blind, right? So that's one thing. And for those of you who are, entrepreneurs or have agencies, demand your money. Do not, if they're not willing to pay your price, then they're not your customer. But if all of us demanded what we were worth, they'd have no choice but to pay us, because our voice is necessary, our perspective is necessary. The world's not going to continue to go around without our input. I remember it might have been like Taraji, Gabrielle Union, a group of actresses were all offered the same role and they were being lowballed. And I remember Gabrielle Union saying they each turned it down and they called each other and said, hey, they just called me and gave me this number and I turned it down. And by the time they got back around to the first one, they had to pay them what they were worth because everybody stuck together. And so as women, especially women of color, we need to do that. And we need to all make sure that we are demanding the same money, no competition, collaboration. There's enough to go around if we all stick together.
Yeah. Talk about PR in the digital age right now, because we are doing it in a different kind of way, but yet and still it needs to get done.
AI. Folks always say to me, am I scared that AI is going to take my job away? And I tell them AI has never been a black woman in America. So AI can't give you what I can give you. What we have done is found how it can support us in terms of churning out, say, social content or digital content quicker. Nothing goes out without being read over and tweaked and things of that nature. So we use it as a tool, but it's definitely not a replacement. You do also have to be very careful with clients because people are creating fake news and fake bots and deep fakes and videos. And I'm consistently having to say to people, you do understand that clips are being cut up, things are being added on top of it. AI is able to layer bodies and voices and all that type of stuff. So you have to be really, really careful. We keep a close eye on any media that comes out about our clients so that we can make sure that it is true. You know, those alerts are going off daily, all day, because there's just so much more that you have to pay attention to and watch over to mitigate any crises in this new culture.
Yeah. And, you know, how much does relationship matter in this business?
Relationships are everything. But I think that's in life in general. I can do PR in finance, I can do PR in pharma, I can do PR in nonprofit. The skill sets are transferable. It's the relationships that I have in each area that are important, so that I can pick up the phone and say, hey, Daren, I have a client that is talking about XYZ and I think it would be a good match for your show. Or I can call a reporter at the New York Post and do the same thing. That's why relationships are so, so important, because there's so much information out there and so many people competing for the attention of the public. And your relationships are what gonna help you weed through that noise.
Yeah. So you made a decision a long time ago to move from corporate, I wouldn't say a long time ago, but it was a while ago, right? To move from corporate into this entrepreneurship of being having your own PR company here. Talk to me about that, because there's so many people right now who are, in a place, in a space where they say, I'm unsatisfied with working that corporate job, right? And we're seeing a lot more in communities of color ditch the corporate job and say, I'd rather try this on my own than rely on you for my check.
Right. So I always tell people it wasn't really my choice. God kicked me out of corporate America 3 times, actually, before I would listen. And the third time I was like, okay, this must not be where I should be, right? And I ventured out into entrepreneurship. It is not, again, for the faint at heart. I'm grateful for the years that I did work in corporate because I learned the importance of policies and structure. Any small business needs those things, right? Any micro business, small business can have up to 500 employees. The majority of entrepreneurs who are people of color operating with 1 or 2 employees. We don't have a whole staff, right? So one, learn that you can't be the bottle washer, the cook, the baker, the candlestick maker. You can't do all the things. You're going to have to outsource if you want to scale and grow. Start with bartering with other businesses in your neighborhood, right? So I remember needing to brush up on my Spanish. There was a young lady who taught Spanish and needed some PR, and we bartered. I had Spanish lessons and we did her press releases and some media for her, and it worked out really well. Find someone that you can barter with initially, and together you'll grow. Support other small businesses, pay them like they need to be paid and when they should be paid, because that is important. We, in the Black community, are one of the few communities who does not resonate that they're going to support each other regardless. And that's where a lot of the power lies, is that other communities are insular first, and then they go outside of the community if they can't find what they need inside, right? We don't think of it that way. I think it's 6 minutes the black dollar stays in the community, if it's even that anymore. And we have other communities where their dollars stay in 30 days, right? And so we need to learn how to do that. And the way that you do that as an entrepreneur is you pay it forward, right? So I support other black-owned businesses or other women-owned businesses as much as I can. And it gets reciprocated. I get referrals, I get other business because I am pouring into the community that can pour back into me. So as an entrepreneur, you need to find your tribe.
Yeah. And how hard was that for you?
It was a little difficult in the beginning because I think I was one of the few people in my circle to venture out first, right? But now it's easier and easier as more and more women and more people of color are starting their own businesses.
Yeah. Well, it's great to have you out there in the field representing, and great to
Thank
have you
you.
sitting across from me.
Thank you.
All righty. Well, we want to let you know, listen, we come to the end of our show. Before that, how do people get, if they want to get
TJM and Co. across everything. So Instagram, LinkedIn, our website, tjmandco.com. You can find us everywhere.
I want to be fair. I couldn't let you leave without doing that. All right.